This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. 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 Boring.
You got it work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome to another edition of Lenbatopic Live here on the ever-expanding, unprecedented.tv, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is as best we can. We share facts and opinions, but we don't mix the two. Also, it's the home of free speech central, if you like, which means that we don't just have people who agree with the presenters or the production team or the people in charge of the station. What we do is we give you the space to hear different views, and sometimes that leads to quite heated arguments. What really matters is that we maintain the torch of free speech, which is sorely tested, damped down, and often extinguished in the mainstream media. To tell you again, we don't want to beat the mainstream media, we want to be it. And in that context, we will continue to expand our offering. This week we have new shows coming up, or extensions of the new series. Claire Dyer with Dire Consequences will be talking about a very, very sensitive subject, the damage that medicines have done to children. Really upsetting thing, actually. I'll be arguing with Mark Oaten about various things. He's a former Liberal Democrat MP, and we'll be talking about the advance of reform, Jeremy Corbyn as well, and many other things too. If you're watching this on demand, you can find all of those programs in the archive on Unprecedented TV in our studio. But perhaps you're watching it when it's first going out. Either way, we welcome your points of view. We regularly monitor what you say, and please think of this as a dialogue. One more thing, if you've got ideas for programs that you think that we should be making, let us know. If we can find the space and we think that it's got merit in terms of promoting our commitment to free speech, then we will happily work and find a way forward. Today we're talking about what I would say is one of the most upsetting subjects that I've seen in the news. Well, I would actually say the most upsetting since the, in my view, disgusting vote on infanticide in Parliament, where members of Parliament voted in great majority in Labour and Liberal Democrat parties to allow the killing of unborn children right to the point of birth. I think that's shocking, and it made me weep. This story also has been, in my view, in the same category, perhaps even worse actually, because this was a child who was 2 years old and was allowed to die by her totally uncaring parents who've just been sentenced as guilty of her death. The two culprits, the two criminals who allowed this vulnerable baby to die, apparently in a tent, though it's not exactly clear how she died, are Constance Marten and Mark Gordon. Constance Marten comes from a privileged background, Mark Gordon not so. But whatever your background, it just does not justify the killing of a child, yours or anybody else's. Any parent who has looked at the details of this horrendous case will know that these individuals must pay a tremendous price, and perhaps there's no price big enough to justify the death of an unborn child who could easily have lived had the treatment by the parents not been so utterly appalling. In my opinion, these two didn't have the capability or the authority to be parents. Their other 4 children have been taken into care for just that reason. And it raises questions about whether we really have got it right in a country where you need to go through multiple tests to drive a car, but no test at all to have a child. Is it really such a sacred right to raise a child that anyone, however abusive or unpleasant, gets the opportunity to do so? I think this raises very difficult questions, but questions we must not shirk. So to join me in discussing these matters is a social campaigner, somebody who himself has made quite a big difference to society. It's Nick Buckley, MBE, author and social campaigner. Nick, thanks for joining me to talk about what really is a very difficult subject.
It is. And this subject straight away forces us to take sides. Are you on the side of baby, or are you on the side of not wanting babies to die? And the second we have to choose, the whole meaning of this case, the whole reason why this happened, goes into the wind.
Just before you go further, tell me exactly why you think that's the option.
I've worked with maybe 1 or 2 dozen families like the family we're talking about now. Very low IQ, dysfunctional, potentially drug addicts, alcoholics, brought up in abusive households, potentially. I don't know the background of these 3 people. I know who they are. I've read what's in the paper, but you only get limited things there. I've worked with dozens of families like this. And I can tell you now, mum and dad love their child. Even the child who died, they love their child. They were trying to do the best for their child by keeping it away from social services. Now, it happens to be true that their love for their child was diminished, was to a certain extent flawed, because they couldn't look after their child. But if you could tap into their heart and ask that heart of theirs, both of them, do you love your child? Was you trying to do the best for your child? Both of those parents would say yes. They failed. They failed dramatically, and an innocent baby died. An innocent toddler died because of them. So we need to start differentiating between, did they want to kill their child, which is no, they didn't. That's why they ran away with their child. To the next stage, which is, were they capable of raising their child, which they weren't, which we all knew they weren't. Hence why 4 children had been taken off them previously. Which then leads to the next question. What are we ever going to do about it? What are we ever going to do about parents, biological parents, either maliciously or through incompetence, damaging their children? What are we ever going to do about that? And that's a discussion which could take 9 hours on this channel.
Well, we may give it 9 hours over time. We'll probably give it, well, we will give it much less on this program today, just for limitations of time. But your position interests me. You make the assumption that there is no doubt at all that these parents actually loved their child. Yet it seems to me, from my life experience, unimaginable that they would treat a child so badly in a tent and everything else that happens, if they truly wanted what's best for their child. But could they not notice, could they not realize, Nick, based on their own experience, the fact that all 4 previous children have been taken into care, that they weren't capable of looking after their child?
Oh, I get that point. I go back to my original statement. These people are of low intelligence. These people, I'm not sure what their IQs are, but I'll tell you now, they're roughly around 85, if not lower, because they would not have done this if they were of average intelligence. Now, the father involved came from a fatherless household, just like many people do, just like I've done. And what that does to you when you come from a fatherless household is you have got no examples, no experience of what a man has to do to protect his children, to provide, to be a protector. So he failed there. His father failed him. So it goes back generation there. She comes from a very privileged background. From what I read, her uncle, auntie, mother, father, knows the royals. She says she's played with the royals as a child. So not only is she spoilt, she also thinks she's better than everybody else, but she's of low IQ. I guarantee she is of low IQ. And when you're of low IQ, you don't think like me and you, Lembit. You don't think like me and you. You don't think of consequences. You don't think of the next step forward. You think of the here and now. You think, that's my child. I love my child. No one loves my child as much as I do. And she's probably correct in that. And then she thinks, I will look after my child. But they're not good enough, are they? They're not, and the child dies. I get that. And I get your outrage at that. But the question I would ask you is, what do you want someone else to do? What do you want the state to do to stop that? Because everything you mentioned now, I'll have a worse scenario than what you can present to me.
It's a very challenging position you're taking. I find that interesting. The essence of unprecedented TV is to face these issues and to give space for true debate. Now, you're right. I felt true upset. You can't help but compare that innocent victim of circumstance, the 2-year-old, with your own children, and imagine what you would feel like if your own child suffered anything like that. As you say, Constance Marten and Mark Gordon, they ran away with their child, made a huge hike, spending thousands of pounds, as I understand it, on travel, until they ended up living in a tent in freezing conditions. It's not clear how the child died. But died she did, and they found the child under rubbish, discarded somewhere. Now, before we go further, because I do find your position interesting, and I want to listen to it without prejudice, what gives you the certainty that they were trying to do what's right for the child, given that they could have taken a different path and the child would be alive now? In other words, if they could see the child was in danger, and they must have surely understood that raising a child in a tent was ludicrously dangerous. Maybe you have a different view. Why is it that you're more sympathetic? And perhaps it is because of, as you infer, you have lived experience which I have not got.
I'm not sympathetic with the two parents. Absolutely not. I think they're scum. I think they're idiots. And I think they directly led to the death of their child. The point I'm trying to make is the solutions to this are so complicated. It's hard even to get into. Now, you've just said that they should have known better. Well, first of all, let's give it a given that they're mentally retarded, that they've got such a low IQ, or they're suffering from mental incapabilities that it stops them making rational decisions. So let's say that's a given, because if it's not a given, then they need to hang. Okay, but let's say that's a given. The next question is, how do they know what's dangerous and what isn't dangerous? Because let me put this to you. You're a father. You're not perfect. You're not a perfect father. And we've not had this discussion previously, but I know for a fact you don't think you're perfect as a father, because no one's perfect as a parent. So does that mean because you know you're not perfect, you should hand your children over to the state to raise? And you would say no, because I can do a better job than the state of raising my children, even though I know I'm not perfect as a parent. And they would say exactly the same thing to you. Now, I'm not defending these two people. I'm absolutely not. I'd like us to move on to discussion of what are the solutions and why we don't implement no solution, because solutions we would need to implement would go against everything you feel is right in life, everything you feel would be righteous and correct. That's what we'd have to break to make to answer this question.
Okay, let's go into that in a minute. But it could be that you have a view that these two were indeed below average intelligence, and they were trying to do the right thing but did the wrong thing. I'm intrigued to know what that could lead to. Here's one of her holding Constance Marten holding the baby, I believe. And they did get some sort of a pram, which they later discarded, some sort of a buggy. Interesting that you would say what you've said. The thing is that there's been quite a clear statement by the police. Let me just share this with you, because this I want to put on there, because it defines how the announcement was made about the outcome of this trial. Let's listen to this.
We long fought for has finally been served for baby Victoria. The selfish actions of Mark Gordon and Constance Marten resulted in the death of a newborn baby who should have had the rest of her life ahead of her. She would have recently celebrated her second birthday, but this was snatched away by the very people who should have protected and cared for her. This was an incredibly challenging investigation for the hundreds of officers who were involved in the search. Our main focus throughout the search was finding Victoria alive, and we all remain devastated by her death. As anyone who's followed this trial will know, it was an incredibly complex investigation. Mark Gordon and Constance Marten deliberately avoided the authorities and continued to shield Victoria from us even after their arrest. This meant even the most experienced child pathologists in the country were unable to establish the cause of Victoria's death. We know today's verdict won't bring Victoria back, but I'm pleased our painstaking investigation has resulted in those who caused her death being brought to justice. Victoria's death was completely avoidable. The couple had plenty of opportunities to do the right thing and come forward to ask for help. They knew throughout that officers were looking for them and baby Victoria. They also ignored medical professionals who directly reached out to them to say that their actions were putting baby Victoria at risk. In court, Martin said they moved around a lot to avoid one single authority having jurisdiction over their daughter. Martin stated that her children had been stolen by the state, referring to the social care system after her previous 4 children were removed from her by the family court. I would like to personally thank the media for the positive support you showed throughout this search, the many members of the public who reported sightings, and Sussex Police for the support provided in the arrests and subsequent search for Victoria. This support was incredibly important to the investigation throughout.
So there's a fairly clear statement about selfishness, and once again, Nick
Can I jump straight in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because his statement has just annoyed me more than anything I've had today or the last few days. Here's a police officer commenting on such a tragic case as if they are the epitome of pureness. So let me tell you what this family is probably thinking, what I would be thinking if I was the mum and dad of the kid they've allowed to die. I'm not making excuses for these parents. I'm not. But let me tell you what's probably in their mind. So we're going to allow our next daughter to be taken into care by social services, the police. And what can we look forward to? We can look forward to in 10 years' time, them being gang raped by industrial Pakistani gangs of groomers across the country. Because that's what happens when you put your children into care. That's how much the police care about my child. They'll take the child off me because I don't agree with something I'm doing, but they will give my child then, when they reach a certain age, to Pakistani groomers and rapists. So that officer needs to keep his mouth shut, and the police should stop making comments on these sort of cases. I'm glad the police looked into this and tried to do the best. I agree with that. But coming out with statements at the end of the case is just annoying me, because they have no right to speak about child protection until every officer in the UK apologizes for 40 years of grooming gangs. So if you want to know why the parents didn't want to hand their child over, there's a great one straight away.
Pretty challenging stuff the things you're saying there are pretty challenging stuff. And I have to say, not the direction I expected our conversation to go, which doesn't make it wrong. It actually makes it tremendously significant, because I think nowhere else except here on Unprecedented TV would we get to the brass tacks on the basis of what you're saying. But I have to push back then and ask you this, Nick. You have issued a blanket condemnation of the state and social services, as if it's almost a foregone conclusion that a child will end up being raped. It can't be the case that all children in care go through that horrendous experience, though we do know that there is a national scandal which the current Labour government, and perhaps previous governments, but certainly the current Labour government, have done almost everything they can to try to avoid being exposed, together with many local councils. I agree with that. Why are you so unequivocally sure about the implications if that child had been?
You broke up for a second then, so I'm presuming I can guess the end of the question. Okay. So you're right. Does every child who goes into care get sexually abused? No, they don't. But every single report in the UK on child services and taking children into care, every single report says this: every child who's taken into care by the state does worse in life than if you left them with the parents they already have. That's how bad our care system is. Our care system, and I've worked with our care system for over 20 years, our care system isn't about protecting children. Our care system is about protecting councils if someone murders a child. That's what our care system's about. It's not about the child. It's about the council not being blamed that a child was murdered. Now, let me put this out there, because this is going to be quite controversial. We are never, ever, ever going to stop a biological parent, killing their child. That figure will never go down to zero. We can stop strangers killing children, and we need to do a lot more work on that. We can even stop step parents and step partners coming on board, usually men, and killing children. We should do a lot more than that. But biological parents, it's hard. It's not hard. It's impossible to get that number to zero. We should try more. Of course we should. Every life is valuable, and we should try harder and harder. But what happens is this: we have a tragic case like the one we're talking about, and the public go, "This is disgraceful. What social services doing? What are the police doing about this? We need more protection for children." So politicians react to that by saying to the police and children's services, you need to be harder. You need to start confiscating more children from parents. And 99% of those parents would never harm those children. But we start confiscating those kids and putting them in homes, which costs a fortune and damages those children. All because we're trying to protect such a minute percentage of children who are at danger from their parents. And they are at danger from their parents. They are. And how do we stop that? There is no answer to a certain extent. But penalising and persecuting parents who would never hurt their children just for the benefit of politicians is where we are now. You speak to any social worker now and ask them about their job. Why aren't you protecting more children? Social workers will tell you, my job is filling in forms. My job is about ticking boxes, because when a child dies, I need to be able to protect myself and the council. So the state of our social services, child services, is our fault for keep demanding outcomes we can never achieve. And by doing that, we're putting more and more children in danger. It's a lose-lose situation. There's no good answers in this. There's no good solutions. It's not like pick this, it's all great. It's bad solution, bad solution, bad solution. But that's 20 years of working on the front line.
You're quite jaded, perhaps, if that's the right word, you're quite jaded about the state of social services in this country.
I've worked with them for 20 years.
And you're saying, based on the subject that we're discussing, that the parents, however inadequate they may have been, had the view, or may have held the view, that putting them into social care was worse than leaving them with the parents.
That might be what they were thinking, but they would be wrong to think that in this case. But I'm just trying to explain what they were thinking. They weren't thinking, let's run away and kill our child. They were thinking, let's run away and save our child. They just turned out to be idiots who didn't know any better, and through their negligence, they killed their own child. I get that, and that's horrendous. But what's the alternative? The alternative is every time Children's Services thinks, oh, we don't like those parents, we're going to kidnap their children. As a society, we need to think of this. We need to think to ourselves, do you want control over your children, or do you want the state to have control over your children? Because if you want control over your children, you are going to have to risk and accept every now and again some low IQ idiots are going to kill their child. Even though you don't want that to happen, and even though we need to put in more procedures to try to make sure it doesn't happen, it's going to happen. And the only way it's not going to happen is if you as a parent give all the power over your child to the state, and then you can't be blamed for what happens to your child. What happens then is the state. I mean, I've worked for the state. If you want a child raised poorly, give it to the state. If you want an organization or service run poorly, give it to the state. There's no perfect answer in this. My answer is, if you want freedom to raise your child, you have to risk poor parents allowing their children to die. Now that's an horrendous thing to say, but it's the only way you get to raise your child the way you want to raise it.
Let me ask, I've had two further questions. Let me ask this, Nick. Do people have a fundamental right to raise children, to have children, in your view?
If you'd asked me 10, 20 years ago, I'd have said no. But now it's yes. Because...
But that's counterintuitive. No, if everything you said is right,
yeah,
and some people can't raise children properly, and this child died needlessly because of the inadequacies of the parents, that's what the court said, basically. Why did they have a right to have not one but 5 children?
Great question. And I've struggled with this myself over a decade, and I've come to this conclusion now, which is, if we can decide who can have children and who can't have children, we'll decide one day you can't have children. You drink, you smoke, you're not going to be a good parent. You can't have children. The second we give that power to the state, it will be abused. Now, that's horrendous for this child who died. I'm not for one moment trying to explain away the incompetence of these parents, the evilness of these parents, the corruption of these parents. I'm not saying that's an acceptable thing for me and you to have freedom with our children. That doesn't exist, that morality. I'm just saying, if we give the state the power to say who can have children, who can't have children, we will regret that. Because I'll tell you what, at this moment in time, the state wouldn't want me to have children. I'm far too right wing. No, you voted Brexit, maybe. You can't have a vote because you don't understand the direction of the country. It will be perverted, like all laws are perverted. I would rather. It's not like I'd rather have deaths of children. I wouldn't. I've spent 2 decades protecting children. I've worked with these families. I've stopped them, but through neglect, killing their children. I've stopped girls being raped. I've spent my life doing this. It isn't like I don't care. It's me looking forward and saying, if we control this too much, We're heading down a path where it is a dictatorship. It's authoritarian rule. You will not be allowed to have children. I will not be allowed to have children. And let's say it gets to a stage where you can't raise your child unless they're a vegetarian. You can't raise your child unless they're, pro-migration. This is just incremental changes that will happen. We can't allow the state to get involved. And I appreciate the flip side is dead 2-year-olds. I get that. And if I could think of something that would save that 2-year-old's life, that wouldn't make us slaves, I'd put it forward. But at this moment in time, I'm not clever enough to think of the solution.
So you don't really have faith in the Home Secretary at the moment, Yvette Cooper, of course. You don't think that she would be able to make the right decision. Here's her having a great time. And I suspect I don't know her background, but I would suspect living far removed from the kind of circumstances you're describing.
There is no good solution. I think that's what I'm trying to say. There is no good solution. All we have is a choice, is a selection of choices of really poor solutions. No matter what you choose, there's going to be a slight upside and lots of downside. There is no perfect solution. I've spent decades thinking about this. There is no solution. We either live free and experience some baby deaths, which is horrendous, or we're not free, in which case we'll experience more baby deaths, but no one can be blamed because it's the state that was looking after them. They're the only two solutions I can think of.
It's tremendously challenging what you're saying. And I have to tell you, Nick, we don't script these programs. They're, as you see, honest and open conversations. And there are two questions I can't answer now, but I have to ask myself, and maybe viewers feel the same. Number one, do I think that everyone has a fundamental right to raise children? And you've put a strong case saying if we give that permission to the state, then as with many other things, the state will put its dogma into place and we end up in a tremendously dark situation. Interesting, big dilemma there. Then the second question is, if that's the case, if everybody has a right to have children, are we being irresponsible towards those unborn children who are born into hell?
We need to do better. Again, my solution isn't let those families have children and kill their babies. Jesus, that's not my solution. My solution is, as a state, we need to do better to offer help and support to those people and not to come across as the enemy, not to come across as you need to flee the country because we're evil and we're going to take your children. Let me tell you about a video I made yesterday. I've been trying to help a family in Greater Manchester since September, nearly a year. We have an adult daughter who's disabled. We have a mum who can't read and write. Both white, British, English, lived there all their lives. I've spent nearly a year trying to get them help and support because they can't read letters that come through the post. They can't pay their council tax because they're not online. She can't read. She has the money. She has the money there, but she can't pay it. Our social services and our support agencies are so poor that I've spent nearly a year trying to get this family help. Not extra money. We're not trying to claim benefits. We're trying to get him someone to come around and help him read the letters and help him, pay stuff. I can't get them help, and it's been nearly a year. So that's what we need to be concentrating on. Help and support for the people failing in our country. I want a social safety net. I mean, our benefit system is out of control. I've reduced lots of our benefits, but I don't want no benefit system. I've read the book called George Orwell, A Road to Wigan Pier. I've seen the poverty we used to grow up in. I don't want people going back to that. I want us to have help and support. I don't want to turn people into beggars. Here's money, shut up, get on. I want a service to come to this family and help them live a dignified life. But at the moment, all they can do is struggle day by day because nobody will help them because they won't tick boxes. Now, let's improve that. If we can improve our social services, the services our charities offer, then maybe we can stop those parents failing at the beginning. Isn't that the answer? Stop them failing at the beginning. And if they're still going to fail, then of course we need to take children away from parents who are going to, through neglect, kill their children. That's always the last resort. It shouldn't be the first resort. Our services are failing.
I have to say, what you're saying to me is both challenging and distressing. And it causes me to have those questions, and viewers too. Perhaps viewers would like to post this, because this is a national debate perhaps we can initiate here from Unprecedented TV. It's a moral dilemma. And the way you've put this, Nick, I've not heard anyone put it that way before. One reason I'm very cautious to second guess or gainsay you is because you have been in the front line for 2 decades and I have not. And that in itself is really significant. So I'll give the last word to you. I want to finish on a more positive note on a slightly different subject. But your conclusion then about this terrible case of baby Victoria, who I think would have been 2 by now, but didn't make it because of what happened. What's your view about what should happen? Should the parents be in prison?
I've no idea. I'd like to end on this. You want the same as me. You want that child not to have died in the first place. That's what we all want. It's too late now talking about punishing parents. Too late. Kid's dead. Why don't we look at the services we're paying for? Your taxes are paying for. My taxes are paying for. Why don't we look at them and try to help them be better? Let's not criticize them. Let's not punish them, because when you punish these services, they go back to box ticking. That's why we're in this mess. So let's stop thinking these services are perfect, and they will be perfect if we criticize them. Let's look at what we're trying to achieve, which is supporting damaged people, low IQ people, mentally ill people. Let's support them to be better parents. That's all we need to do.
Thank you for your forthrightness. I never doubt your authenticity or your sincerity. You have caused a lot of concern for me that maybe I haven't thought this through enough. There is a temptation, natural temptation, as a parent myself, to want those people to be punished, perhaps as a warning to others. But I see the point you're making too. So I end up conflicted, Nick Buckley, talking with you about this today. And I thank you for being so clear on it. Not what I expected you to say. On a brighter note, maybe we can talk about this next week, but I understand on a completely different subject. This is more of a trailer than anything else. I understand that you've published a book recently. It's just come out.
Yep, this weekend. So 2-3 days ago. It's called Anglophobia, A Price Worth Paying to Be English. But it's more than that. So I discussed what Anglophobia is. So Anglophobia technically is a hatred or dislike of the English, but it's more than that now. It's grown. It now means the hatred of the British, but it's more than that. Hatred of the Anglosphere, the Canadians, Americans, Australians. It's more than that. Anglophobia now means the hatred of white people, and we see it in our society all the time.
Let's discuss that next week then. I don't think a sudden change in direction in this particular episode will help us, but maybe next week you can come back.
Absolutely.
And talk about the content of that book, which I'm sure I will want to read, and viewers will too. Nick, thank you as always for your candidness, and really for the fact that you think these things through. Are you ever worried about being so outspoken that no one will listen?
No. I don't care if people listen or don't listen. because I've come to the conclusion now that when I'm on my deathbed and my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren say to me, Pops, the world's a mess, the country's a mess. What did you do to fix our country? I can smile and say, I tried. And that's all the man can do is try.
Wise words and quite inspirational after a rather heavy conversation. Thank you. As always, it's always great to speak with you. That is Nick Buckley, MBE. Have your say. Go to the chat on X, and I'd like to know what you think too. It's a very, very big conversation we've just had there, but we have to have it, and probably you won't hear it anywhere else. Whether you agree or disagree, I'd like you to say what you think. Feel free to repost this, and you'll find this on YouTube as well as on X. Perhaps we in Unprecedented can make a difference to the debate, to say the things that others are afraid to through conformity. Feel free to have your say as well. Thank you to the team. Thank you to you for watching. And today I thank Nick Buckley, MBE, for shining a light in awkward corners that we may not want to look into. I'm Len Topic. This is Unprecedented TV. Have a good day.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. 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 Boring.
You got to work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages,